Why was the smallest person at Firebase Cobra always standing in the exact spots where a sniper would position themselves? No one asked. No one noticed. Not until the day everything changed. The Chinook descended through clouds of desert dust, rotors thrashing against air so hot it shimmered. Inside, gripping the webbing along the fuselage wall, sat a woman who didn't belong here. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Mia Torres, 26 years old, barely 5'4", clutching her camera bag like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to Earth. The loadmaster had laughed when she climbed aboard back at Fob Sentinel, pointing at her oversized pack. "You sure you got enough gear there, ma'am?" She'd smiled, said nothing. That was her way, always watching, never explaining. When the wheels touched down at Firebase Cobra, she stepped into afternoon glare that could blind you if you weren't careful. Ranger Team 412 stood in formation near the operations tent, their squad leader already striding toward her with that walk all career soldiers have. Purpose in every step. Captain Vincent Holt, 38, with the weathered face of someone who'd seen too many deployments, too many things that keep you awake at 3 in the morning. "Miss Torres," he extended a hand, grip firm but measuring, the way you test someone you're not sure about. "Welcome to Cobra. We'll try to keep things boring for you." She met his eyes without flinching. "I'm here to document reality, Captain. Boring would be fine." Over the first week, Mia moved through the firebase like a ghost. She photographed soldiers cleaning weapons, standing watch on the perimeter, eating MREs in whatever shade they could find. The Rangers tolerated her presence, though some grumbled about having a civilian liability embedded with them. A reporter. Someone who'd never understand. Someone who'd get in the way when things went bad. But Corporal Danny Walsh noticed something odd. He was the kind of soldier who noticed things others missed. Small details that could save your life or end it. "Captain," he said one evening, watching Mia position herself near the northern barrier, "that reporter. She's standing exactly where I'd post a designated marksman." He paused, considering his words. Perfect sightlines, elevation advantage, cover from 3 directions. Holt had noticed too. He'd watched her stand motionless for long moments, body perfectly still, eyes tracking something in the distance. Not like someone framing a photograph, like someone calculating windage and range. The way you look at terrain when you're hunting something, or when something might be hunting you. One night walking past her tent, Holt saw light bleeding through the canvas. He paused. Through the gap he could see Mia cleaning her camera lens, but the movements were wrong. Too methodical, too practiced. Her fingers moved in the exact sequence someone would use to field strip and clean a precision rifle. Muscle memory doesn't lie. It can't. He cleared his throat. Mia's head snapped up, and for just a moment, Holt saw something cold and sharp in her eyes, something that didn't belong to a war correspondent. Then it vanished, replaced by the same mild expression she always wore, that carefully constructed mask. "Just maintaining my equipment," she said. "Dust gets into everything out here." "Right," Holt studied her face, searching for truth in the shadows. "You former military, Miss Torres." She didn't look away, but her answer told him nothing. "I've been around bases my whole life. Father was Army, guess I picked up habits." It was a non-answer wrapped in plausibility, the kind of deflection you learn when you have secrets worth keeping. Holt let it drop, but that night he wrote in his duty log, "Embedded correspondent Torres, recommend background verification. Training indicators suggest prior service. Some instincts you trust, some warnings you don't ignore." The patrol into the village of Al-Rashed came 3 days later. Intelligence reported civilian displacement, possible humanitarian crisis. The kind of mission that could be routine or could go bad in seconds. Ranger Team 412 rolled out in 3 MRAPs, dust kicking up behind them like brown ghosts. Mia rode in the second vehicle with Sergeant Kyle Patterson's fire team, wedged between men who carried weapons like extensions of their bodies. The village was devastation given form. Collapsed walls, burned-out vehicles, craters in the road where IEDs had detonated and changed everything for the families who lived here. Families huddled in doorways now, watching the American soldiers pass with eyes that held too much grief and not enough hope. Children with hollow expressions that made you want to look away, but you couldn't, because looking away felt like abandonment. Mia worked quickly, capturing images of the destruction, the faces of the displaced, the small moments of humanity persisting in hell. But Patterson noticed she never flinched at the sound of distant gunfire, never hunched her shoulders when a helicopter passed low overhead, rotors hammering the air. Most embedded reporters jumped at every loud noise for the first week, their bodies betraying fear they tried to hide. She moved differently too. When they entered a building to check for survivors, Mia instinctively positioned herself near the exit, back to the wall, eyes on the entrance. When they walked through an intersection, she gave it a wide berth, avoiding the fatal funnel. The kind of awareness you only get from training, from experience, from surviving situations where one wrong step means you don't come home. "You're awfully comfortable in a war zone," Patterson said, not quite an accusation, but close. Mia lowered her camera, meeting his gaze directly. "I've been to 4 different conflicts. You get used to it." Patterson's expression didn't change. "Most people don't get used to this." She didn't answer, raising her camera again to photograph a woman carrying a child through rubble that used to be someone's home. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Then it happened. Patterson was crossing an alley when Mia suddenly dropped her camera and sprinted forward, tackling him to the ground with force that knocked the air from his lungs. A burst of AK fire ripped through the space where he'd been standing half a second earlier, bullets stitching the wall with impacts that would have torn him apart. "Sniper!" Mia yelled, voice cutting through chaos. "Rooftop, 200 meters, 11 o'clock. The Rangers took cover, scanning, searching. It took Walsh 15 seconds to spot the shooter, a lone gunman on a minaret, nearly invisible against stone that matched his clothing perfectly. The kind of position that takes skill to find and patience to use. "How did you see him?" Walsh asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Mia was breathing hard, face pale, hands trembling slightly with adrenaline. The sun hit his barrel, just a reflection. But Holt, kneeling behind the MRAP, knew better. That reflection would have lasted a fraction of a second, a glint of light in peripheral vision that most people's brains would dismiss as nothing. You didn't spot something like that unless you knew exactly what to look for. Unless you'd spent hundreds of hours scanning rooftops for threats. Unless you'd been trained to hunt other snipers, to think like them, to see the world through their eyes and anticipate their choices before they made them. That night back at Cobra, Holt pulled Mia aside, away from the others, away from ears that would hear things better left unheard. "Where did you serve?" His tone wasn't harsh, just tired. The weariness of someone who'd been lied to enough times to recognize it. "Captain, I don't. I've been doing this for 16 years, he interrupted, voice quiet but firm as stone. "I know what training looks like. You spotted a target our designated marksman missed. You moved like someone with CQB experience, so I'll ask again, where did you serve?" Mia met his eyes. For a long moment she said nothing, and in that silence lived 1,000 decisions, 1,000 roads not taken. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out a faded cloth patch. It showed a hawk diving toward prey, talons extended, frozen in that moment before the kill. Holt's breath caught. He recognized it instantly, and recognition brought understanding he didn't want. "Falcon 7, he whispered. The name carried weight, history, reputation. Things that don't die just because you want them to. How do you run from something that lives in your muscle memory, in the way you breathe, in how you see the world?" Mia nodded slowly, and the admission cost her something visible. 3 years designated marksman, then primary sniper, 87 confirmed eliminations. The numbers hung in the air between them like accusations. Holt knew what Falcon 7 represented: elite, precise, lethal, the kind of unit that did work other units couldn't or wouldn't do. "Falcon 7 was disbanded 2 years ago," he said carefully, "after the Kandahar incident." Mia's voice went flat, empty of everything except old pain. "After I hesitated, after my spotter died because I couldn't pull the trigger fast enough." She stared at something beyond Holt, beyond the firebase, beyond the present moment entirely. Holt said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only appropriate response to grief. I left the service, Mia continued, words coming faster now, like confession she'd been holding back too long. Became a reporter so I'd never have to look through a scope again, so I could document war instead of contributing to it. So maybe I could find some way to make sense of what I'd done, what I'd become. Her hands clenched. But you still see it, Holt said, and it wasn't a question. Still calculate angles, wind, distance, every minute of every day. She took the patch back, folding it carefully with reverence usually reserved for flags or photographs of the dead. I can't turn it off. The training doesn't fade just because you want it to, but I don't have to act on it anymore. I can choose to be someone else. Holt watched her face, reading the conflict there. What if you have to? The question landed heavy. Mia looked away, toward the mountains in the distance where threats waited in shadows. Then I hope I don't hesitate again. The briefing came down from battalion headquarters on a Tuesday morning, delivered with the casual bureaucratic tone that meant someone far from combat had made decisions for people who'd face the consequences. Ranger Team 412 would escort a convoy of humanitarian supplies through Dustfall Valley, a narrow pass between two ridgelands known for ambushes and IED attacks, the kind of terrain that made every tactical manual scream warnings you couldn't ignore. Lieutenant Sarah Chen studied the topographic map with growing dread. "This is a bad idea," she said, jabbing a finger at the choke point. "We'll be boxed in. No room to maneuver, no air support if the weather turns. It's a kill box waiting to happen." "Command wants those supplies delivered," Holt replied, but his expression said he agreed with every word she'd spoken. "The village on the far side has been cut off for 3 weeks. People are dying." Chen's frustration was palpable. "And we'll be dying right here if they hit us in the valley." She turned to face him fully. "You know this is wrong, Captain." He did. He absolutely did. But orders were orders, and the needs of civilians outweighed the tactical concerns of soldiers. At least, that's what they told themselves. Holt looked at Mia, who'd been standing quietly in the corner, absorbing everything, calculating risks she wouldn't voice. "You're staying on base for this one." Her response was immediate. "No." She stepped forward, and there was steel in her voice now, determination that wouldn't bend. "This is exactly the kind of mission I need to document. Humanitarian aid reaching desperate civilians. This is why I'm here." Holt's jaw tightened. "It's too dangerous." "Captain, I've been in firefights before," Mia said, and the statement carried truth they all recognized. "I can handle myself." Walsh spoke up, surprising everyone. "Sir, with all due respect, she's proved she's not a liability, and if something goes wrong, having someone with her skills might be useful." He didn't need to elaborate. Everyone in the room understood what skills he meant, what Mia could do if forced, if necessary, if the situation deteriorated beyond salvage. Holt studied her face, grim, torn between responsibility and pragmatism. He didn't like it, but Walsh had a point that couldn't be ignored. "Fine, but you stay in the command vehicle with me. No heroics." Mia nodded agreement, but both of them knew how meaningless promises became when bullets started flying. The convoy rolled out at dawn. 4 MRAPs and 2 supply trucks moving slowly through desert terrain that felt like driving into a trap. The heat built as the sun rose, turning vehicles into ovens and testing everyone's endurance. Mia sat beside Holt in the lead MRAP, camera ready, but her eyes were constantly moving, scanning terrain with practiced efficiency. Walsh noticed she kept glancing at the ridgelines, reading the landscape the way a conductor reads sheet music. She saw potential firing positions everywhere, overlapping fields of fire, natural cover, optimal ranges for different weapon systems. The valley narrowed as they progressed, rock walls rising on both sides until the sky became a ribbon of blue overhead. Then the radio crackled, static, then silence, then static again. Holt grabbed the handset. "All units, comm check." Nothing. Someone was jamming their frequencies, which meant someone knew they were coming, had planned for this, had waited for the perfect moment. Chen's voice came through on short-range radio, tense. "Captain, I don't like this. We should turn back." But before Holt could respond, the world exploded. The IED detonated under the second vehicle, a massive blast that lifted the MRAP and flipped it onto its side in a screaming collision of metal and momentum. The rear supply truck swerved, driver fighting for control, and that's when the ambush truly began. Gunfire erupted from both ridgelines simultaneously, a perfectly coordinated attack that spoke of professional military training. Not insurgents. Something worse. Bullets hammered against armored vehicles, the sound like hail made of death. Contact left and right. Someone screamed over the radio. We're taking fire from multiple positions. Holt grabbed his rifle, already assessing the situation through years of combat experience. They were trapped. The overturned vehicle blocked retreat. Advancing meant driving into more fire. The ridgelines offered perfect cover for attackers while the Rangers sat exposed in the valley floor. This wasn't random. This was carefully planned execution. Mia had her camera up, documenting chaos, but Holt saw her other hand resting on her sidearm ready, waiting. An RPG streaked across the valley, missing the lead vehicle by meters and detonating against rock with a concussion that rattled teeth. Then another, and another. The enemy had brought serious firepower, more than random insurgents ever carried. Dismount, find cover, Holt ordered, and Rangers poured from vehicles, seeking whatever protection the terrain offered. Walsh's team took position behind a boulder formation. Chen's squad moved to flank left, but fire drove them back. They were pinned, systematically suppressed by an enemy that knew exactly what they were doing. Mia stayed close to Holt as he directed fire, coordinated responses, tried to create options where none existed. She watched the battle unfold with clinical detachment, and something cold settled over her features. The mask slipping, the reporter fatting, something else emerging. "Captain," she said quietly. "The fire pattern, it's coordinated, professional. Look at how they're controlling sectors, suppressing movement, denying us maneuver space." Holt glanced at her. "I know. This isn't an ambush," Mia continued, voice flat. "It's a kill box. They're going to pin us until we run out of ammunition, then overrun our position." She was right. Holt knew she was right. He could see it playing out, the terrible mathematics of combat where numbers and position determined outcomes more than courage or skill. They needed air support. They needed reinforcements. They needed something to change the equation. "QRF is 30 minutes out," he said, checking his watch. "We have to hold." Mia looked at the ridgelines again, calculating. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Give me a rifle." What do you do when the person you tried to bury claws her way back to the surface? When survival demands you become what you swore you'd never be again? Holt stared at her. "What?" "A rifle, Captain. Designated marksman weapon if you have it. I can thin their numbers, buy us time." Her voice carried absolute certainty, the kind that comes from knowing exactly what you're capable of. Holt hesitated, torn between regulations and reality. Mia wasn't military anymore. She was a civilian. Arming her violated protocols, created liability, opened doors that should stay closed. But protocols didn't stop bullets. Liability didn't matter if everyone died. And those doors might be their only chance. "Walsh," he called over the radio, "the DMR from the overturned vehicle. Can you reach it?" Static, then Walsh's strained voice. "Negative, sir. It's pinned under the wreckage." Mia pointed to a rocky outcropping 300 meters upslope. "There. I can get elevation, see their position, start taking out their marksmen. It'll force them to reposition, give your people room to maneuver." She met Holt's eyes. "I can do this. You know I can." Every instinct told him not to. Every regulation screamed against it. But Holt had survived 16 years by trusting his gut, and his gut said they needed her. Needed what she'd been. What she still was, underneath the camera and the carefully constructed civilian identity. He pulled his sidearm and handed it to her. "There's a rifle in my vehicle. Take it. Do what you do." Mia took the pistol, and something in her expression shifted. The warmth bled away, replaced by focus so intense it was almost frightening. "Thank you, Captain." She moved to Holt's MRAP, grabbed the M110 semi-automatic sniper system from its rack, checked the magazine with hands that knew this weapon like an old friend. 7 rounds loaded. She found 2 more magazines in the equipment locker. 21 total, not enough. Never enough, but it would have to be. Mia slung the rifle, secured the magazines, then looked at the outcropping. Getting there meant crossing open ground under fire. Most people would hesitate, calculate odds. talked themselves out of it, she just ran. The sprint was terror measured in heartbeats. Mia kept low, using whatever cover existed, moving in unpredictable patterns that made her difficult to track. Bullets kicked up dust around her feet. Something tugged at her sleeve. Close, too close, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Momentum was survival. When she reached the base of the outcropping, she started climbing, fingers finding holds, boots pushing against rock, rifle bouncing against her back. Her lungs burned. Muscles screamed. Ignore it. Push through, keep moving. Halfway up, an enemy fighter spotted her. She heard him shout, saw muzzle flash from a position 200 meters across the valley. Bullets ricocheted off stone inches from her head, fragments cutting her cheek. Mia pressed flat against the rock, waiting for the burst to end, then continued climbing with desperate speed. Near the top, her hand slipped. For one terrible moment she hung by 3 fingers, boots scrabbling for purchase, rifle threatening to pull her backward into space. Then she found a foothold, hauled herself up, and rolled onto the ledge gasping. No time to recover. Mia unslung the rifle, found a stable shooting position among the rocks, and looked through the scope. The valley spread below her like a tactical map, and everything became clear. She could see the enemy positions now, the coordinated fire teams, the command element directing the ambush from a protected spot on the western ridge. She could see the Rangers pinned down, their desperate situation, how close they were to being overwhelmed. And she could see something else. Something that made her blood run cold. A helicopter gunship circling to the south, staying just out of range of small arms fire. Russian-made Mi-24 Hind, heavily armed, heavily armored, waiting for the right moment to join the fight and end it decisively. This wasn't just an ambush. This was a coordinated assault by professional soldiers with serious equipment. Mia keyed the radio. "Captain, you've got a gunship inbound. Hind looks like the export variant. If it enters the fight, we're done." Holt's response was grim. "I see it. Can you do anything about it?" She studied the helicopter through her scope, calculating angles and possibilities. "Maybe, but first I deal with the shooters keeping you pinned." Mia settled into the position, feeling the rifle become an extension of her body. This was muscle memory older than conscious thought. Breathing slowed, heartbeat steadied. The world narrowed to scope, target, wind, distance, angle. Everything else fell away. First target. Enemy marksman on the eastern ridge, elevated position, systematic fire pattern suggesting professional training. Range, 420 meters. Wind, left to right, approximately 8 kilometers per hour. Elevation angle, 17 degrees down. Mia adjusted for all of it, calculations happening in the background of her mind like breathing. She centered the crosshairs on his chest, exhaled halfway, and squeezed the trigger with pressure so gradual the shot surprised her. The rifle barked. Through the scope she saw the man jerk backward, rifle tumbling from his hands as he collapsed. One down. The enemy didn't know where the shot came from yet. Confusion was her ally. Mia shifted position slightly, acquired a second target. Another marksman, this one more careful, only exposing himself for brief moments between shots. Patient, disciplined, dangerous. She waited for his next appearance, tracking his pattern, predicting his timing. When his head and shoulders appeared above cover, she was ready. Second shot. He dropped. Now they knew. Mia saw fighters scrambling, pointing toward her position, reorienting their fire. Bullets began impacting around her ledge, forcing her to take cover, but she'd bought the Rangers precious seconds. Down in the valley, Holt's voice cut through the radio chaos. "Suppressive fire on the eastern ridge. Move, move, move." The Rangers responded instantly, using the distraction to reposition, find better cover, consolidate their defense. Walsh's team advanced 50 meters, securing a position that gave them better fields of fire. Mia leaned out from behind her boulder, found a third target, a machine gunner who'd been pouring fire into Chen's position, keeping them completely suppressed. Range, 380 meters. This shot mattered. Miss and the gunner would keep pinning the Rangers. Hit and Chen's squad could maneuver. No pressure, just perfect execution. She fired. The machine gunner slumped over his weapon. The sustained fire that had been hammering Chen's position went silent. "Ghost, this is Chen," the radio crackled. "I don't know who you are, but you just saved my life." Mia didn't respond. No time. She was already tracking another target, then another. Each shot deliberate, each shot necessary, each shot a small piece of survival purchased with precision. The enemy was reacting now, bringing more fire toward her position, making her job harder. A bullet struck the rock beside her head, showering her with fragments. Another hit her rifle's scope, shattering the optic and nearly tearing the weapon from her hands. She rolled backward, heart hammering, ears ringing. The scope was destroyed, the rifle effectively useless at these distances without it, but Mia noticed something. The bullet that killed her scope had come from a very specific angle, a very specific location, and that location required skill. She scanned the opposite ridgeline carefully, looking for the telltale signs of a sniper position. There, a subtle shadow that didn't quite match the surrounding terrain, a small displacement of rock that might mean nothing. Or might mean everything. Mia grabbed her camera, used the telephoto lens as a makeshift spotting scope. Through it she could see him clearly now. A man in camouflage, positioned perfectly, rifle resting on a bipod, professional setup, professional discipline, and terrifyingly familiar body language. Her breath caught. She knew this shooter, had trained with him, had competed against him in qualification courses back when she was Falcon 7. His name was Viktor Sokolov, call-sign Viper, former Russian Spetsnaz, now a mercenary working for whoever paid him. And he was scanning for her, searching for the sniper who just killed 3 of his teammates. Their eyes didn't meet across the distance, but Mia felt his presence like a physical weight. Viper was good, better than good. He'd beaten her in competitions twice, though she'd beaten him 3 times. The kind of rivalry built on mutual respect and the understanding that one day they might face each other for real. Today was that day, and only one of them would walk away. When you're fighting someone who knows all your tricks, how do you survive? When the enemy across from you learned from the same instructors, what advantage do you have left? Mia didn't have a functioning scope. Viper did. She had limited ammunition. He probably had plenty. She was pinned on a rocky outcropping with nowhere to go. He had multiple fallback positions and support from an entire assault force. By every tactical measure, she was already dead. But Mia had one advantage Viper didn't. She was fighting for something other than money. Something worth dying for if necessary. And desperation makes you dangerous in ways skill alone never can. She abandoned the scoped rifle, useless now, and worked her way toward a different position along the ledge. Movement drew fire. She ignored it, trusting speed and unpredictability to keep her alive. When she reached a new vantage point, she grabbed Holt's pistol, checked the magazine. 15 rounds. Handgun against rifle at 400 meters. Suicide by mathematics. But there was another option. The Hind helicopter was circling closer now, pilot getting bold, thinking the ground troops had softened the target enough for a decisive strike. The gunship's armament could shred the Rangers' position in seconds, end the fight with overwhelming firepower. Mia couldn't allow that. She studied the helicopter's flight pattern, watching how it banked, how it turned, looking for the moment of vulnerability that every aircraft has. Just one moment, one chance. That's all she needed. Mia keyed the radio. "Captain, when I say break left, you break left and don't stop running. Understand?" Holt's response was immediate. "What are you planning?" "Something stupid, just trust me." She didn't wait for his reply. The Hind was completing its turn, beginning an attack run toward the valley floor. This was it. The moment. Mia stood up, completely exposed, raised the pistol with both hands and started firing at the helicopter. Every shot deliberate. Not trying to damage the aircraft. That was impossible with a handgun. Trying to get the pilot's attention. Trying to make herself a target. It worked. The Hind's nose swung toward her, 30 cannon traversing, locking on. In 3 seconds she'd be dead, torn apart by explosive rounds designed to destroy armored vehicles. Mia kept firing, kept drawing the gunship toward her position. "Now, Captain, break left." Below, Holt didn't question, just ran, pulling his team with him. The Hind's pilot tracked Mia, finger tightening on the trigger. Just before he fired, she dropped flat behind her boulder and felt the world disintegrate. The 30 rounds chewed through rock like it was paper, each impact a thunderous explosion. The ledge shook. Fragments filled the air. Something heavy struck her shoulder, driving all breath from her lungs. Mia stayed flat, pressed against stone as death passed overhead in a stream of fire. The hind roared past, the pilot angry now, frustrated that he'd missed. He'd come around for another pass. She had maybe 30 seconds. Mia grabbed the damaged rifle, useless for precision shooting but still functional at close range. She moved again, ignoring pain, ignoring fear, ignoring the voice in her head screaming that this was insane. Found a new position. Watched the hind bank wide for its second attack run. The pilot would be more careful this time, more precise. He'd seen what she was capable of, wouldn't underestimate her again. The helicopter came in lower, slower, cannon already firing before reaching optimal range. Suppressive fire to keep her pinned, smart. But Mia wasn't where he expected. She climbed higher, 10 meters up the rock face, finding a narrow crevice that gave her angle the pilot couldn't anticipate. When the hind passed below her position, she leaned out and fired the entire magazine at its engine compartment. Most shots missed. 2 hit the armored fuselage and did nothing. The third one found something vital. Black smoke poured from the turbine. The helicopter lurched, losing altitude, barely managing to limp behind the western ridge before it crashed or was forced to land. Either way, it was out of the fight. Down in the valley, the Rangers cheered. Holt's voice crackled over the radio. "Ghost, what the hell was that?" Mia didn't answer. She was watching Viper's position again, seeing him move now, repositioning to get a better angle on her. The main assault was still happening, enemy ground forces pressing the Rangers hard, but now it had become personal between two snipers who knew each other too well. She had 3 rounds left in a rifle with a broken scope. Viper had everything he needed. This would be close quarters work for snipers. Not the 1,000-meter shots from training ranges, but brutal, fast, desperate exchanges at ranges where you could see your target's expression when you killed them. Mia worked her way down from the ledge, moving toward the valley floor, trying to close distance, make her handicap less decisive. Viper tracked her. She could feel his attention like heat on her skin. He fired. The bullet passed so close she heard its passage, a supersonic crack that promised death. She dove behind a boulder, rolled, came up firing. Her shot went wide. Viper was already moving, flowing from position to position with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime doing this. 2 rounds left. The mathematics were simple. She'd run out of ammunition before she got him, unless she changed the game. Mia grabbed a rock, threw it hard toward an opening between boulders. Viper's rifle tracked the movement, fired instantly. Good instincts, good reflexes, but wasted on a decoy. While his attention was divided, Mia sprinted across open ground, covering 20 meters before he reacquired her. His shot clipped her vest, the impact like being hit with a hammer, spinning her sideways. Mia went down hard, breath gone, ribs screaming. But she kept moving, rolling behind cover, forcing her lungs to work. 1 round left. She could see Viper's position clearly now, less than 100 meters away. He was set up behind a rock formation, perfectly positioned, patient as death, waiting for her to make a mistake. The radio crackled, Chen's voice strained. "Ghost, we're being overrun. They're in close now. We need help." Mia looked down at the valley floor, saw the nightmare unfolding. The enemy had breached the Rangers' perimeter. It was hand-to-hand fighting now, brutal close-quarters combat where training and desperation collided. Walsh was out of ammunition, Chen was wounded, Holt was fighting with a knife because his rifle was empty. They were dying, right now, while she was locked in a duel with Viper. The choice was impossible. Stay and finish Viper, probably die in the attempt and let the Rangers be slaughtered. Or abandon the fight, help them, and let Viper kill her from behind the moment she exposed herself. There was no good option, no tactical solution, just impossible choices and consequences measured in lives. Mia closed her eyes for 1 second, thinking of Marcus, her spotter who died because she hesitated. She'd promised herself never again. Never. She made her choice. Mia stood up, completely exposed, and fired her last round at the thinnest part of Viper's cover. The sandstone where it met granite, structurally weak, only inches thick. The bullet punched through and kept going. Through her peripheral vision, she saw Viper jerk backward. Not a kill shot, she'd hit his shoulder, but enough to buy seconds. Without looking back, without confirming the hit, Mia turned and ran toward the valley floor, toward the rangers, toward the chaos. Viper's rifle barked behind her. The shot went wide, his aim thrown off by the wound. He fired again, closer this time, again. The bullet grazed her leg, burning pain that made her stumble, but Mia didn't stop. She hit the slope at full speed, not climbing down but sliding, jumping, falling in a barely controlled descent that should have broken her neck. 30 meters down, she crashed into rocks that arrested her momentum. Pain exploded through her ribs. Definitely broken. Get up. Keep moving. No time for pain. She grabbed an AK-47 from a dead enemy fighter, checked the magazine. Half full, better than nothing. Mia ran toward the ranger's position, and all the training came flooding back. Not the careful precision of sniper work, but the brutal efficiency of close-quarters combat. She hit the enemy from behind, firing in controlled bursts, creating chaos, breaking their formation. "Rangers, rally on me," she screamed, voice raw. The surviving rangers responded instantly. Walsh grabbed a weapon from a fallen enemy. Stone, bleeding from a dozen wounds, staggered to her feet and started firing. It became a desperate brawl, close enough to see faces, to hear voices, to smell fear and blood and cordite. Mia used the AK until it ran dry, then switched to Holt's pistol, then to a knife she took from someone's belt. She fought with everything she had, every bit of training, every ounce of strength, every fragment of will. An enemy fighter tackled her. They rolled across the ground, trading blows. Mia got her thumb into his eye socket and he screamed, releasing her. She grabbed a rock and brought it down on his skull. Then suddenly it was over. The few remaining enemy fighters broke and ran. The battlefield fell silent except for groans of the wounded and the crackle of burning vehicles. Mia stood in the center of it all, swaying, covered in blood, both hers and others. Her face was a mask of dust and crimson, vision blurring, body failing. "Tors," Holt limped toward her. "It's done. Stand down." She looked at him, not quite seeing, still in that cold, distant place where she'd been operating. Then her knees buckled. Holt caught her before she hit the ground. "Medic, I need a medic." What do you become when you save everyone except yourself? When the cost of heroism is losing the person you tried so hard to be? Mia awoke in a field hospital 3 days later. Her entire torso was wrapped in bandages and breathing felt like glass shards in her chest. 2 broken ribs, a concussion, multiple lacerations, severe dehydration. The medical chart at the foot of her bed read like a casualty report. But she was alive. Somehow, impossibly alive. Captain Holt was sitting in a chair beside her bed, head bowed, half asleep. He looked 10 years older than she remembered. "Hey," he said softly when he noticed her eyes open. "Welcome back." Mia tried to speak, but her throat was raw. Holt handed her water, helped her drink. "The team," she managed. "Chen will pull through, lost 3 total." His voice carried the weight of those names, soldiers who'd never go home. "But it would have been all of us without you." He paused, and she could see him choosing words carefully. "Battalion command wants to pin a medal on you. Silver Star, probably, maybe more." She shook her head immediately, the movement sending spikes of pain through her skull. "No medals, I'm not military anymore." Holt's expression didn't change. "Mia, you saved 23 lives. You took out 2 helicopters, killed a notorious mercenary, and held off a company-sized enemy force practically by yourself. People need to know what you did." His voice was gentle but firm. "No," she said, and there was finality in the word. "I don't want recognition. I just want to do my job." "Which job?" Holt asked quietly. "Reporter or soldier?" The question hung there unanswerable. "Both, neither, I don't know anymore." She looked at her hands, still shaking slightly, seeing things on them that soap could never wash away. "I spent 2 years running from who I was, building this new identity, this new life where I didn't have to make those choices anymore. But maybe you can't run from training like that. Maybe it's always there waiting, just under the surface." Holt leaned forward. Marcus would understand. The name hit her like a physical blow. Marcus Connolly, her spotter, the man who died because she hesitated for 3 seconds too long. "I hesitated and he died," Mia whispered, eyes filling with tears. "This time I didn't hesitate and 23 people lived. So which version of me is right? The one who thinks too much or the one who just pulls the trigger?" Her voice broke on the last words. The version that makes the hard choices when they need to be made, Holt said. His tone carried conviction she wanted to believe. You're not a murderer, Mia. You're a protector. There's a difference even when the actions look the same from the outside. He reached out, squeezed her hand once. You did good. Marcus would be proud. Over the next week, rangers from Team 412 visited constantly. They brought her flowers stolen from the base commander's office, contraband candy bars, and endless gratitude that made her uncomfortable. These soldiers who doubted her, who'd seen her as a liability, now looked at her like she was something more than human, something legendary. The attention felt wrong, like wearing a uniform that didn't fit. Walsh came with a gift, a brand new camera, top of the line. Figured you needed this, he said, awkward with emotion, since your old one got smashed saving our asses. He set it on the table beside her bed. I don't know what to say except thank you. You didn't have to do what you did. You could have stayed safe. Mia studied the camera, seeing both her future and her past reflected in its lens. Yes, I did. You would have done the same. Stone brought something else, a patch she'd had the base tailor make custom. It showed a hawk diving, talons extended with 11 stars arranged below it. The guys are calling you Ghost, Stone explained, her expression serious. The 11-shot Ghost. 11 shots, 11 kills before everything went close quarters. Thought you might want something to remember it by. Something to honor what you did out there. Mia held the patch, feeling its weight. Not just the fabric, but what it represented, who she'd been, who she still was despite everything she'd tried to change. The hawk looked like it was falling and attacking simultaneously, frozen between sky and earth. She understood that feeling. Thank you, she said quietly. This means more than you know. On her discharge day, Holt walked her to the helicopter pad. The morning was cool, temperature not yet brutal, desert quiet in that brief window between night and day. So what now? He asked, though she suspected he already knew the answer. Back to journalism, Mia said, adjusting her pack. Tell the stories that need telling. Document the truth, the human cost, the faces behind the statistics. And if another dustfall happens? His question was gentle, not quite accusing. Mia touched the camera hanging around her neck, then the small concealed holster she'd strapped to her ankle that morning. Inside it, Holt's pistol, the one he'd given her before everything went to hell. He hadn't asked for it back. Then I'll make the choice Marcus never got to make. I'll do what's necessary. She met Holt's eyes. I can be both, I think, reporter and protector. Document the war and fight it when I have to. Falcon 7 would be proud, Holt said. The words carried weight. She smiled, a sad, complicated expression that held too many contradictions to name. Maybe, or maybe they'd say I should have never stopped being who I was trained to be. The helicopter's rotors began to spin, that distinctive whump-whump-whump that every soldier knows. But I tried to stop. I tried to be someone else, someone clean, someone who didn't carry this weight. And maybe that was wrong. Maybe you can't escape what you are. Maybe the best you can do is choose when to use it. Mia climbed aboard, settling into the same webbing seat she'd occupied 3 weeks earlier when she arrived as a stranger. But she wasn't the same person anymore. That version of herself had died somewhere in Dustfall Valley, killed by necessity and reborn as something she didn't quite understand yet. As the Chinook lifted off, she looked down at Firebase Cobra growing smaller beneath her. The Rangers of Team 412 stood in formation, saluting. A final gesture of respect for the ghost who'd saved them. Mia raised her camera and took a photograph, capturing the moment. But instead of looking through the viewfinder, her eyes tracked the horizon, calculating distances, wind speed, angles of fire. The training was still there, would always be there. The difference was she'd stopped fighting it. Some habits you could never break, some skills you could never forget. And sometimes the person you'd been trying to escape was exactly the person the world needed you to be. The helicopter banked west toward home, rotors beating against morning air. In her pack beside her camera equipment, Mia carried the patch Stone had given her, the 11-shot Ghost. She'd frame it when she got home, hang it somewhere she could see it every day. A reminder that you could run from your past, build new identities, create new lives. But when people's lives hung in the balance, when the moment came that demanded everything you had, the past would always catch up. And maybe that wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a gift, the ability to protect when protection was needed, the skill to save lives when others couldn't, the strength to make hard choices and live with their consequences. Mia didn't know if she'd fully accepted what she was yet, didn't know if the reporter and the sniper could truly coexist. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: she would never hesitate again. Not when lives depended on it. Not when being Falcon 7 meant the difference between survival and slaughter. The desert passed below, endless and ancient. Mia closed her eyes, feeling the vibration of the helicopter, the warm sun on her face through the open door. She thought of Marcus, wondered if he could see her now, wondered if he understood that his death had taught her the most important lesson: hesitation kills, action saves. And sometimes the only thing standing between good people and terrible outcomes is someone willing to pull the trigger. She opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They'd stopped shaking. Maybe she'd found her peace, or maybe she'd just accepted war. Either way, she was done running. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. Sometimes strength doesn't announce itself. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous, and you never know until the moment demands revelation. Mia Torres learned to carry two identities: the observer who documents tragedy and the warrior who prevents it. Most people would say those roles conflict. Most people would demand she choose. But Mia understood something they didn't. The world needs both. Stories need telling. Lives need saving. And sometimes, one person has to carry that weight. She tried to escape her training, to bury the sniper beneath the reporter's carefully constructed persona. But Dustfall Valley taught her the truth. You can't separate who you were from who you are. The skills remain. The reflexes persist. The ability to calculate death in fractions of seconds doesn't fade just because you want it to. What changes is your relationship to those abilities. Whether you run from them or accept them. Whether you use them reluctantly or refuse them entirely. Mia chose acceptance. Not celebration, not pride, just acknowledgement. She was Falcon 7 and she was a war correspondent, and those identities didn't cancel each other out. They informed each other, made her better at both roles. The sniper understood tactics, recognized threats, read battlefields with precision that elevated her journalism beyond surface-level reporting. The reporter understood humanity, questioned purpose, saw beyond targets to the people affected by conflict. Together they created something unique. Someone who could witness war and fight it, document suffering and prevent it, tell stories and change outcomes. The Rangers called her Ghost because she appeared when needed and vanished when finished. Because she moved between worlds that usually remained separate. Because she existed in the space between civilian and soldier, observer and participant, past and present. She'd earned that name in 11 shots and countless decisions made in seconds that felt like hours. And she wore it the way she wore the Falcon 7 patch, privately, reluctantly, but without shame. Back home, Mia's apartment filled with evidence of her dual life. Camera equipment beside tactical gear. Journalism awards next to the framed patch showing a diving hawk and 11 stars. She kept the DMR rifle Holt had given her, secured properly, maintained meticulously, hopping she'd never need it again, but knowing that hope wasn't a strategy. She'd learned that lesson the hardest way possible. When people asked about Dustfall Valley, she showed them photographs. Faces of displaced families, rangers under fire, the aftermath of violence. She told them about courage and sacrifice and impossible choices made by ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. She didn't mention her own role unless pressed, and even then she minimized it, deflected praise, redirected attention to the soldiers who'd bled beside her. The story wasn't about her. It never had been. But late at night, when sleep wouldn't come and memories played on repeat, Mia would take out the patch and study it. 11 stars, 11 shots, 11 lives saved before the close quarters chaos began. She'd count them sometimes, matching stars to faces. The marksman on the eastern ridge, the machine gunner pinning Chen, the helicopter pilot Viper. Each one a decision, each one a weight, each one necessary. Marcus would have understood. He'd have recognized the burden of precision, the responsibility that comes with exceptional skill. She talked to him sometimes, his memory at least, explaining her choices, seeking forgiveness for the hesitation that killed him and acceptance for the action that saved others. She didn't know if the dead could hear, didn't know if redemption worked that way, but the conversations helped, made the weight bearable, reminded her why she'd become a reporter in the first place, to honor the dead by telling their truth. Team 412 stayed in contact. Walsh sent emails about their deployments. Chen recovered fully and wrote asking for advice about transitioning to civilian life. Stone got promoted and credited Mia's example with teaching her about quiet competence over loud bravado. Holt retired eventually, took a teaching position at Ranger School, sometimes called to discuss tactics or trade stories or just check that she was okay. Those connections mattered. They reminded her she wasn't alone in carrying this weight. Years passed. Mia covered conflicts in 4 more countries, always with her camera and occasionally with her rifle. She never looked for fights but didn't run from them either. Twice more she'd had to intervene, make the hard choice, become Falcon 7 when circumstances demanded. Each time left scars, visible and invisible. Each time reinforced the lesson. You can't outrun what you are, but you can choose how to use it. She never accepted the medals, never wanted recognition for doing what needed doing. The Rangers understood. They'd learned that some people serve quietly, that the most effective warriors often prefer shadows to spotlights. They respected her boundaries while honoring her contributions in private ways. Toasts given when she wasn't present, stories shared among teams, a reputation that spread through elite units without her name ever being spoken publicly. One day Mia received a package, no return address. Inside she found a photograph of Viktor Sokolov, Viper, recovered from his shoulder wound, working as an instructor somewhere in Eastern Europe. He was demonstrating sniper techniques to students, his expression serious but not cruel. Attached was a note, just 4 words in Russian. Next time, no hesitation. It could have been a threat, could have been acknowledgement, could have been respect between warriors who understood each other across enemy lines. Mia studied the photograph for a long time, then filed it away with her other memories of Dustfall Valley. Viper was right about one thing: there would be a next time. Conflict didn't end. Wars evolved, and people with her particular skills would always be needed, whether they wanted to be or not. She kept working, kept documenting, kept the rifle maintained and the skills sharp because hope wasn't a strategy and pretending she wasn't what she was didn't protect anyone. Mia Torres learned to live with contradiction: peace-seeking warrior, documenting protector, reluctant hero. She learned that identity wasn't binary, that you could hold multiple truths simultaneously, that strength sometimes meant accepting complexity instead of demanding simplicity. And on quiet mornings, standing at her window watching the city wake up, Mia would think about Dustfall Valley, about 11 shots fired with absolute necessity, about the choice to stop running from herself, about rangers who lived because someone decided that sometimes, just sometimes, the person you tried to bury needed to surface. Not to dominate, not to define, just to protect when protection was required. The hawk diving on her patch represented that moment perfectly. The instant between thought and action, between hesitation and commitment, between who you want to be and who you need to be. Mia had learned to exist in that space, to honor both the journalist who questioned war and the warrior who fought it, to carry cameras and weapons with equal competence, to document suffering and prevent it. She'd never be comfortable with what she was capable of, never celebrate violence or lose sight of its human cost, but she'd stopped apologizing for her skills, stopped running from her training, stopped pretending she could be only one thing. The world was complicated, threats were real, and sometimes the only thing standing between good people and terrible outcomes was someone willing to make the hard call, take the difficult shot, carry the weight that others couldn't bear. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Sometimes strength doesn't announce itself with speeches or poses or dramatic moments. It just shows up when needed, does what must be done, and fades back into quiet obscurity. Sometimes the most important warriors are the ones who never wanted to be warriors at all, who carry their skills reluctantly but deploy them decisively when lives hang in the balance. Mia Torres was all of those things: reporter and sniper, observer and participant, the woman who ran from war and the woman who fought it when necessary. She'd stopped trying to reconcile the contradiction and started accepting it as truth. Not comfortable truth, not simple truth, but truth nonetheless. And somewhere in that acceptance, she'd found something close to peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the ability to live with it. Not forgetting the past, but integrating it into her present. Not becoming Falcon 7 again, but allowing that part of herself to exist alongside the reporter, the photographer, the person who told stories instead of ending them. The helicopter had long since landed. The mission had long since ended. But the lessons remained, carved into memory deeper than training, stronger than fear. And when Mia looked at her reflection now, she saw both versions of herself looking back, the woman with the camera and the woman with the rifle. They weren't enemies anymore. They were partners. And together they'd continue doing what needed doing, telling what needed telling, protecting what needed protecting. Because sometimes that's what the world requires. Sometimes complexity is strength. Sometimes carrying contradictions makes you more effective, not less. And sometimes the only way to honor those who died is to live fully as yourself, all parts included, no apologies necessary. Dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.